Okay, so we're gonna carve this today, and what it is, it's a leaf with a acorn here, and I'm gonna make it into a brooch for my mum's birthday. Now, I'm just gonna sort of like show you how I've come up with this idea. I sort of looked at other people's sort of carvings along this line on Pinterest, and I quite liked some of them. They had this sort of the stalk coming around here and around there, but I wanted to keep it really simple. We've got the leaf over here coming down like this. Now, I did have it going back on itself, but it kind of made this look like it was a complete sort of oval, but didn't look quite right. So you sort of like play around with that kind of thing when you're designing something like that. And also the stalk on this acorn, I was trying to work out whether it should come down here or maybe here, go like this way. But I decided to do it here. It doesn't really make sense, but it's quite nice how it's resting in that area there. The next step really is to choose your wood. And so I've got this is Australian hardwood. Now when you design, it depends on your design. If it's really complicated, or maybe not complicated, but there's thin parts in it and parts that are gonna be fragile, you really need a hardwood to do it. So, which makes things carving harder, but in some ways easier as well. So what we've got to decide really is how thick we want it, and what that depends on really is you sort of like look at what the thickest part of your carving is going to be, and it's probably going to be that acorn. You know, I never really measure things with rulers. Let's just do that.
Let's cut it out on the bandsaw. I love my bandsaw and I'm a bit afraid of it, so you can sort of see me. I use push sticks, and the great thing about a bandsaw is you can just sort of like leave it there. It's not going to do anything, it's still running. And I always push that last bit out really slowly, so when it comes out it doesn't sort of like, you got a lot of pressure on it and then it's released through the wood and all of that kind of stuff, and it will speed up. So whenever you turn it off, always wait for the blade to finish and then take your piece of wood. Look at that grain, isn't it beautiful?
Okay, so I've cut that out on the bandsaw, and I actually sanded it back a little bit on my belt sander. Yeah, you can see the beautiful grain there. It's awesome. Okay, so now we're going to put it on here, and I try and sort of like save wood, you know, so I'm not going to sort of like put it right in the middle here or something like that. I'm going to put it at the end, but I just want to be aware that there's no sort of like cracks or anything, and it looks pretty solid through here. There's no real big changes in the grain, sort of maybe something like that might be happening. Oh, I think that's all right actually. It's pretty strong wood. Anyway, so I will put that on there.
And I'm sure you've seen this before. You're putting the carbon paper with the shiny side down and the dull side up, and you just go over your drawing with a pen. Usually like a red pen's really good because then it stands out from the pencil, but can't find one of those, so we're going with the blue pen today. It's pretty boring, isn't it? So I will fast forward that. And there we go, we've finished going over the drawing, and voila. So I usually go over with a pencil to make it a little bit darker. Now what I'm doing here is I'm using that Dremel drill press. Should actually do a review on that thing. I use it quite a lot, but I make a lot of little wooden jewelry and all that kind of stuff. But here we go, I'm on the, so I drilled that hole so I could use the scroll saw and put the blade through that hole to get the middle parts, but I'm doing the outside parts just at the moment. It is really hard wood, so the scroll saw is like slightly struggling a little bit. So I tend to sort of like go around the main shape and then take out the little bits in a couple of different angles like that. There we go. It's fun having a scroll saw. You can do a lot of projects with a scroll saw. Used to be really popular, but I think laser cutting kind of took over. But I still really like the little scroll saw. So we're looking at like what part of the carving I should carve first, and I've sort of decided on doing that stalk down the bottom sort of taking it to sort of like a level where I kind of think it should be. And I'm using a cutter burr there. It's really nice to use on harder woods. You could use it like your Kutzall flame burr as well. That would work as well. And I'm just going to do some kind of general shaping at the start. I kind of try and like do a kind of basic kind of shape of the leaf and try and work out in my mind as I'm going along what parts of the leaf should be up and down, sort of maybe sort of like a pre-limb kind of, oh yeah, this is working going down, I'll do the other one up, and sort of like that kind of thought process is happening. And I'm sort of like making the middle into a little bit of a valley where I'm going to put that main kind of vein that goes right throughout the leaf. And as that cutter burr was kind of like straight, you kind of want something a little bit rounder to sort of give it a little bit more of a organic kind of look to it. So I've swapped over to this. This is actually a fine Kutzall sphere burr, the smallest in their range, and the 1/8 kind of shaft size. Now if you're buying Kutzalls for your Dremel, now you need the 1/8 shaft, and I have got links in the description for Kutzall, and it helps the channel out, and you actually get 5% off as well, so check that out. I don't make a lot of money on YouTube. I think I make about $5 per video. It takes me like probably a day to make a video, so it's not a get rich quick scheme, I tell you. But here we go. I've got this new Kutzall taper burr here, and I think it's really good for doing convexes because it has a nice flat kind of surface to it. So I'm sort of like just shaping that acorn sort of roughly at the moment. Now I've come across a little bit of a problem just where that acorn part is there. Ooh, go back on screen, come on cameraman, you can sort of see it, it's a little bit rough. I kind of like went a little bit too deep with the scroll saw, so I've got that tiny little cutter burr on there, and sorry I can't give you a link for that because I just bought it in the shop in New Zealand. And so I'm just using the tip of it to sort of like round it off and try and sort of reshape that acorn. I guess you call it the cap of the acorn. Now I'm sort of like looking at where to put that vein that goes all the way through, so I'm sort of like sketching that in, and we'll put that in next. And I think I'll also put the acorn cap on as well. Now I find this shape in the cutter burrs the most useful. Really getting that kind of like sharp edge to put in sort of just those edges on sort of like acorns and all of those kind of things. You can sort of see it there. Really beautiful kind of sharp slicing action of the cutter burr, almost like a gouge. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting the vein in, and I went in from both sides, and so I've sort of formed a sort of like a line in the middle, and then I'll adjust that line with maybe some diamond burrs. I've got those T-shaped ones there, that's a really nice one there, and this one here from Master Carver. Now you can see this one is, I'm just sort of like going over the top, going over it to sort of round it off. I find the veins quite hard to do. You kind of think they're going to be simple, but they're actually quite hard. So what I'm going to do there is sort of round that part off there, and that stalk as well. I'm going to round that off, and that stalk as well, because it kind of looks a little bit strange when it's square. And we'll put some textures onto the cap of the acorn, and maybe we'll put some veins in as well. Now I've left, you might have noticed up in the right hand corner or the left hand corner, I've left a picture of the finished item up there, and it's usually kind of like with YouTube, you put that at the end so people keep on watching to the end. But hey, I'm more interested in you guys sort of seeing where the progress is going to, so you can sort of like learn more. So it's sort of like trying to see what I'm trying to achieve as we're going along. Now what I'm doing there is I'm really trying to define that kind of part in between the acorn and that stem. Now I always think one of the difficult things with these tiny little carvings is just getting into little areas and sorting them out. And you'll probably find that as well. Your burrs sometimes awkward to get into little areas. Now what we're putting in a little bit of texture onto that cap, and I'm using one of those inverted cone burrs there. You could have probably used a T-shaped burr as well. So I just go over like that, and then I'll do a few more lines on the other angle. So it sort of like leaves diamond shapes, and it's kind of like quite a nice texture to leave. Could have done a lot of different kinds of textures on here. And then I just go in at a different angle and put in the diamonds. And they'll look not that natural at the start because they look quite straight, but what you can do is go in with a diamond burr and kind of rough it up a little bit as you go along. So like when I mean a diamond burr, maybe like that cone burr or something like that. I'm going in with a T-shaped burr just to try and get those a little bit more defined and deeper, those cuts. And you can sort of see me here, I'm doing a lot of passes over the wood, and the reason for this is it is very hard wood, and you don't really want to go in with too much pressure, because what's going to happen is you're going to burn the wood. So you can sort of like either do really light passes, you could slow the burr down, try all these kind of different things when you're carving harder woods. Okay, so now we're going to put the brooch pin on the back, and I always find you got to give it a light sanding so the glue can kind of stick to it. And this is what I usually do when I'm mixing up glue. Now this is really good for sort of like if you're fixing small carvings and all that. And a lot of people will use a little piece of wood, but I just use this sort of like masking tape or painter's tape or whatever you call it. Put it like on your table and mix it up with a little kebab stick. You can actually wipe the kebab stick off and use it again if you're really tight for money. And then you just dab that on and you're way to go. Put it onto the little back. Make sure it's up the right way. And then leave it. It's usually pretty strong after about 10 minutes, but ideally you want to leave it about 24 hours. And that is the finish of this carving. I really like how it turned out, and I hope my mum likes it. And remember to hit that like button, and we will see you next time.